In the 17th century, the Ottoman Empire was a mighty force, considered one of the most powerful empires in the world. The Ottomans had long been a dominant presence in Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa, and by the time of the Siege of Vienna in 1683, they controlled a vast expanse of territory that stretched across 3 continents. Under the reign of Sultan Mehmed IV, the empire was at the height of its military might, with a highly disciplined and formidable army, including the renowned Janissary Corps, which was the backbone of the Ottoman military. At this point in history, the Ottomans had been engaged in a long-standing struggle for dominance in Europe. Over the decades, they had steadily pushed westward, taking control of much of the Balkans and Hungary. The conquest of these lands had significantly weakened the power of the Holy Roman Empire, which had been the dominant Christian power in Central Europe. For the Ottomans, Vienna, the capital of the Holy Roman Empire, represented the last significant hurdle in their quest to expand their empire into the heart of Europe. The Ottomans had already laid siege to Vienna once before in 1529 under the command of Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, but they had been forced to retreat due to logistical challenges and harsh weather. However, by 1683, the empire had grown even more powerful and better prepared to take the city. The Ottomans saw Vienna as a crucial target, not only for its strategic position, but also because they believed that conquering it would break the will of European powers and cement Ottoman dominance in the region. The siege began in July 1683, when Kara Mustafa Pasha, the Grand Vizier of the Ottoman Empire, led a massive army of approximately 150,000 soldiers, including infantry, artillery, and cavalry, to surround Vienna. The city's defenders, led by Count Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg, numbered just around 15,000 soldiers, with additional citizens and volunteers helping to defend the walls. Despite their numbers, the defenders knew that they had to hold out until reinforcements could arrive, or the city would surely fall. The Ottoman forces launched relentless assaults on the city, using their powerful artillery to bombard the walls and trying to create breaches for their forces to enter. The siege grew increasingly dire for the defenders as food and supplies dwindled and disease began to spread within the city. The defenders were determined but strained, with little hope in sight. They could only hope for a miracle to break the siege and save the city from Ottoman control. At this moment, Europe's fate rested on the arrival of the relief army. King John III Sobieski of Poland, who had been an ally of the Habsburgs, gathered a coalition army of Polish, Austrian, and German forces, totaling around 70,000 men. The Polish cavalry, famously known as the Winged Hussars, was regarded as one of the most formidable military forces in Europe. The relief army, with Sobieski at its helm, marched across challenging terrain and arrived just in time to relieve Vienna. On September 12, 1683, the two forces met in the Battle of Vienna. The Ottomans, caught off guard by the sudden arrival of such a large and well-prepared force, found themselves in a precarious position. The battle was fierce, but the combined European forces, with Sobieski's cavalry leading the charge, decisively defeated the Ottomans. The Ottoman army, already stretched thin from months of siege warfare, was forced to retreat in disarray, ending the siege and marking a critical turning point in history. The Battle of Vienna was not just a victory for the defenders of the city, but also for all of Europe. The defeat of the Ottoman forces halted their expansion into Central Europe and signaled the beginning of the Ottoman Empire's decline in the region. This marked the end of the Ottomans' hopes of extending their empire into the heart of Europe. The failure to capture Vienna would result in a series of military setbacks for the Ottomans over the next century, as European powers like the Habsburgs, Poland, and Russia began to assert themselves more aggressively. For the Ottomans, the loss at Vienna was a heavy blow to their prestige and military reputation. It signified the limits of their power, and from that moment onward, the empire began a slow but steady decline. The failure to capture Vienna also sparked a shift in the balance of power in Europe, as the Habsburgs began to rise as a dominant force in the region, and the Ottomans increasingly found themselves on the defensive. In the aftermath of the failed siege, the Ottomans faced growing internal and external challenges. Their military tactics, once highly effective, became outdated in the face of modernizing European armies. The political structure of the empire began to fracture, and successive sultans struggled to maintain control over the vast empire. Meanwhile, European powers, emboldened by the victory at Vienna, began to push back against Ottoman influence, gradually reclaiming territories that had once been part of the Ottoman Empire. The Siege of Vienna in 1683 stands as one of the most significant turning points in European history. It marked the end of the Ottomans' expansion into Europe and the beginning of their slow but inevitable decline. The victory for the defenders of Vienna not only saved the city, but also shifted the balance of power in Europe, giving rise to a new era in which the Ottomans would no longer dominate the continent. The battle and its aftermath ultimately reshaped the course of European and Ottoman history, laying the foundation for the geopolitical landscape that would unfold in the centuries to come. What if the Ottomans had taken Vienna? What would have awaited Europe? What path would the world have followed? If the Ottoman Empire had succeeded in capturing Vienna in 1683, the entire course of European and world history could have been dramatically altered. The city, then the heart of the Holy Roman Empire, was seen as the final barrier to Ottoman expansion into Central Europe. Had the Ottomans taken it, they would have not only solidified their dominance in Europe, but also potentially shifted the entire balance of power across the continent. The fall of Vienna would have marked the beginning of a new era for the Ottomans, whose influence would have likely extended far beyond the borders of the Balkans. With Vienna in Ottoman hands, the empire could have expanded even further into Central Europe, perhaps bringing entire regions such as Hungary, Austria, and even parts of Germany under its control. The strategic location of Vienna, a cultural and economic hub of Europe, would have provided the Ottomans with a powerful foothold from which they could further assert their influence over European politics and trade. Europe would have been forever changed. The Habsburg dynasty, which was a dominant power in the region, would have been severely weakened, possibly even eliminated. This would have allowed for the Ottomans to establish a stronger presence throughout the rest of Central and Eastern Europe. Additionally, Catholicism, which had been the major religious force in much of Europe, might have faced a much more significant challenge from Islam. The power dynamic between the Christian monarchies and the Ottoman Empire could have shifted dramatically, leading to an era of religious and political tension. In the longer term, the Ottoman Empire might have experienced a resurgence of strength and stability. With increased territory, resources, and influence, the Ottomans could have enjoyed a period of economic growth, strengthening their military and infrastructure. This would have altered the trajectory of the empire, potentially staving off the slow decline that began in the 18th century. With greater power, the Ottomans could have challenged other emerging European powers like France, Britain, and Russia, creating a much different global power structure. The European Renaissance, which was already underway at the time, might have taken a different direction too. With Ottoman control over vast swaths of land, the influx of cultural exchange and ideas could have been vastly different. The Renaissance, which was heavily influenced by Western European developments, might have seen more Islamic, Turkish, and Eastern influences shaping the artistic, scientific, and philosophical landscape. On a global scale, this change would have had profound implications. A stronger Ottoman Empire would have likely played a much more central role in global trade, especially through the Mediterranean and the Middle East, potentially reshaping colonial ambitions. European powers like Spain, France, and Britain might have been forced to alter their colonial strategies, especially as the Ottomans could have controlled vital trade routes and had a significant impact on European access to the East. The rise of the Ottomans in Europe might have delayed or even prevented the Age of Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution, which were deeply tied to the rise of Western European powers. In short, the success of the Ottomans in capturing Vienna would have likely created a different geopolitical landscape, with Central and Eastern Europe potentially falling under Ottoman control for much longer. The balance of power in Europe and the wider world would have shifted, leading to altered cultural, economic, and political developments. The Ottoman Empire could have remained a dominant force in the region for centuries, possibly reshaping the entire course of world history.